Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club for the next installment of our work here on the Estes Vesta Intruder. So at this point I've got all the fins attached. I checked my alignment, they look pretty good. There are some other decorative things to do, but this video, fingers crossed, should wrap up the construction elements of this particular project. Now, the main thing I need to be doing in this video is attaching a couple other little items, not least of which are these little decorative bits, which are going to get fixed like so. But they need to be rounded. This is very tedious because A, they are round to begin with, and B, they are very small. Typically, if I wanted to round an edge, I would just sand around the edge of it. But this is really small and it's round to begin with, so that's not going to work so well. So I've done almost all of these, 11 out of 12. This is the last one. And the best technique that I've come up with is, and again, this is very small, so it's very breakable. I fortunately have not broken any yet, knock on wood. There we go. But I'm going to round the ends of these things by kind of sanding the corner off of them, rotating it a little bit. And I'm not trying to do the whole thing here. I'm just trying to do maybe like a third or so of it leading up to the edge. And I am not looking for like an amazingly round job here. I'm just looking to take that sharp corner off, and that's probably about as good as it's going to get. So I'm maintaining a little bit of pressure with my index finger, and then just rocking it back and forth and taking a peek. I mean, I did a little bit. It's actually does need some more work, but this is the technique I've used on the edges, because I feel like if I tried to use the sanding block there, I would end up just breaking stuff. And I really don't want to do that. I could probably stand a little bit more work. I do use the sanding block a little bit later, and maybe that I can just finish up the process. Same deal here. I'm taking the corners off of the excuse me, other end that I have not worked with yet. And I'd rather this take a while, be slow going, than to try to blast through this and break anything. Because yeah, I mean, I could glue this back together, but I really, really do not want to do that. This is also made somewhat more difficult than probably it needs to be by the whole cutting business again. All right, so the ends are basically done, so I'm going to use my sanding block on the middle. And I'm just trying to turn it over so you can see it better. Just kind of rotating, slowly rotating this thing against my sanding block rather than moving the sanding block itself. It seems to be easier, these little pieces, to just move the wood. Alright, taking a peek, I'm looking down at you, probably can't see anything, but it's round. It's not a great job. This little bit here doesn't look particularly round, so I'm going to try carefully do a little more work. And how's this end? It's all right too. There are little bits of rattiness that have gotten kind of dislodged here, so I can get rid of them by just very gently running the sanding block over it. This is kind of like the grain, the fiber of the wood has gotten knocked off. Unfortunately, too, you can see in a bunch of these there are fairly deep little grooves that have been smushed into this stuff. Ideally, the filling would have taken care of that, but it didn't, and there's no way I'm going to try to do that again. So, good enough. All right, let's start applying things. There are many things to do here. I need to apply the launch lugs. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to apply 2 of these while you're watching, and then put the launch lug in between it. But before that, I think we might as well put the motor mount in. The motor mount's ready to go. You should always test fit first this actually is quite nice, but the one thing I've noticed is I can't spin it the whole way around because at least one of the fins might be a little bit farther down than the other ones, and that's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of. And I'm going to try, at any rate, the instructions don't really show particularly clearly if the little doodads are supposed to line up with anything. I'm going to try to have them line up because, why not? They're lines. I might as well have the fins try to align with things. So in any event, this is our usual application procedure for putting putter mount in. I'm going to put some glue on my little scrap here, and then I'm going to brush it, and I'm going to need to put it in about, the instructions say 2.5 inches. So I did at one point have a mark. I think this is my 2.5 inch mark, but I've done this enough times that I'm going to be basically eyeballing it. I can see actually down this one because it's a fairly wide rocket body. So I can actually see what I'm doing for once. You, of course, cannot. But the good news is, when you do this by yourself, should you choose to undertake this project, you will be able to see what you're doing, which is always a nice little perk. Because when you're dealing with smaller rockets, that is frequently not the case. All right, so I've painted a pretty broad ring inside there. I'm also going to put some glue right along the inside edge here. So that way we get glue for both of the ring segments. Okay. It doesn't really, again, matter, I think, where these go, but I'm going to just push it in and then see if I can't line up any of the little fin attachments. That's probably pretty good. Frequently, we try to do the launch lug in line with the engine hook. And, I mean, I could do that. It's not that far off, but I think I'm actually pretty happy with it where it is. So, there we go. Motor mounts in. I'm going to flip this upside down to let it dry, at least for a moment. And then we have all 12 of these little decorative dealies to apply. Before I start slapping them on, I did sand these down en masse to get this side about as smooth as I can muster. I just want to make sure before I start applying the glue that none of them got away like really uneven. And they seem alright. This one does anyway. I'm also not going to do the 2 layers of glue approach on these because they're decorative. They don't, they're not fins. So they're not going to be experiencing the kind of force, hopefully, that the fins experience. And there's also an incredible amount of surface area on these things relative to their size, especially how much they stick out into the airflow. So I think just glue will be plenty. And I said I want to do this, I want to put these on around the launch lug. So again, it says line it up with the end. And then, like usual, I'm just going to rock it forward. These actually are pretty, for the most part, they're pretty easy to get on right. The only problem is that unlike a fin, these can have some like bowing to them. The wood warped a little bit. So you do need to, once you've applied it, make sure that you haven't like bent the wood piece, which is unlikely, but I've certainly done it. So worth checking. All right, I'm running my finger to clean up any little glue dribbles, and then let's take a peek. It looks pretty straight, having a look down here. It's actually not completely in line with this fin sticking out here, which is kind of odd. It just means that I didn't draw the line super straight, I guess, when I used the door jam, but it's good enough. Again, these are purely decorative. They do not really have a real purpose other than making the rocket look cool. Okay, so let's do another one. I'm not going to worry about letting them dry in between because I really, knock on wood again, should not be bumping them or anything that would dislodge anything or make my life miserable because I hadn't allowed things to set. Now, you'll notice here, because these are fairly thin, and the pieces themselves are fairly small, I did get a little bit of glue that dribbled off the edge, and I do very much want to clean that up before it goes on. All right. It's the same deal. These, you'll notice too, they're not the same length. That's another product of having to cut these, and I did end up trimming them as they came out of the wood because some of them had kind of like ratty edges to them. So unfortunately, they're not all the same length, which makes this look a little amateurish, unfortunately. But hopefully it won't really be noticeable in the finished product. Cleaning up my seams and checking to make sure that it is straight and not warped in any of that stuff, and it looks pretty good. It's actually kind of peeling off the back here, so I do need to hold that down. Oh, and same deal at the end of this one. Both of them seem to be kind of pulling away, which leads me to believe that, again, this is a consequence of having cut these beyond the laser cutting. So I need to make sure that they are firmly glued down, because I will, if I need to, I'll put fillets on these things. I don't really want to put fillets on these decorative parts, but if they're sticking up in the air, I won't really have much of a choice. And yeah, so this one is a bit, it's not level. So I might need to sand the whole collection a little bit more to make sure that they're smooth the whole way down. So I don't want to have to hold all of these things up, spend the excess time holding them in place, make sure the glue is fully set. I'm probably going to have to do fillets on these just because it seems like the only way to deal with this. All right, well, in any event, the remaining 10 I will do on my time. Now, as for the launch lugs, they're going to go like this. But the problem with that is, well, basically the deal is I can't put the launch lug, this one, right on the line. I can't have it centered because the line is underneath this part of the fin, which is exactly what's supposed to happen. Screw this up. But what I'm going to have to do instead is I'm going to use the line that's on here as kind of like the left edge. So yeah, and then I'm going to have to be very careful about making sure that they are properly aligned. Because of course, if the launch lugs aren't aligned, you can't put it on the rod. And if you can't put it on the rod, then you can't fly it. So I'm going to put the back one on first. Again, I'm not really going to take the time to do the 2 layers. It really shouldn't be necessary here. Fingers crossed. But I'm going to put this down here, and I'm going to kind of put it right against the fin as close as I can. Now, in doing so, I've created a little bit of a glue bubble in there, which I'm not terribly surprised by, but I do need to get that smoothed out as best as I can, because I certainly don't want that anywhere near the hole in the launch lug. I have to do that back here as well. I'm just going to spread it so that it's not anywhere near. Because of course, if you get glue plugging the launch lug, it means your launch lug won't be 3/16 of an inch in diameter anymore. And if that's the case, then the rod won't work. I have one I really like it. I did a pretty good, not to toot my own horn, but I did a pretty good job making it. It looks nice. It has a 3/16 rod lug on it. And I don't know if I didn't quite get it straight or what I did exactly, but it doesn't work. It's kind of the short version, and I have to fly the thing off of a 1/8 rod, even though it has a 3/16 mount on it. And I mean, you can do that, but it defeats the entire purpose of having the longer rod. Now, anyway, while I've been talking, I added this one. The instructions say that the line that I made here in the last episode is supposed to be the front end of it, which is a little unusual. And now I definitely need to check my alignment, and it's like, oh boy, it's not even close. So I'm going to have to wiggle this over a little bit. It actually looks like through some coincidence or just random luck that the line I drew, even though this is not on the line, this one is, and they seem to be lined up, ironically enough. So like my own slight errors have kind of canceled each other out. At this point, I am checking to make sure that I can see like right down the middle, and that these two are as aligned as possible. Like it probably needs to go over just a little bit more. And you definitely have to do this while the glue is still wet so you can move things. Now, as soon as I'm done here, before I put any more of these strakes on, I'm going to go and I'm going to get my launch rod, my actual pad, right, and put this on the pad. Glue still be tacky, so I could, if I'm not careful, I could dislodge these entirely. But I definitely want to make sure that they are lined up, because if they're not, again, I'm not going to be able to fly this thing. And that would be unfortunate, because it's a cool looking kit. And, I've put time into this. So I would very much like it to look good and fly. All right, so that looks pretty good. Again, I will go test that. I have a whole bunch more of these little guys to add. And that basically takes care of the construction phase. After this, so remember, I don't have to do the typical business with filling the wood and all that kind of stuff. I might sand these a little bit more, just the edges of them. Maybe, I'm not going to round them because the cardstock is right up to the edge, so I'm not going to do that either. So it's probably straight into spray paint priming and then painting. So we will pick things up there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part.